Yo guys, what's up? Welcome back to today's video. So I just got back from class. My next class today was actually canceled because my professor is dealing with some family stuff, so that's fun. But I thought I would talk about a topic today that I have not addressed, and that is, does resolution matter for a camera? Okay, resolution, does it matter? Here's why it doesn't. Okay, so, move my laptop out of the way here. I have a number of cameras, as you may or may not know. What do I use the most? Well, obviously the one you have with you the most is your best bet. So me, I always have my iPhone with me, because that can I can shoot RAW on it, I can run and gun, and that's that. If I really need to, if I'm really desperate, I can do video. Hopefully I'm not that desperate. Then of course I have my GoPros, my older boy. Here's my organized camera bag. My older boy, a GoPro Hero 7. My new one, which is right here, a Hero 10. And then I have, of course, my iPad camera, which is better actually than my phone camera. I just don't want to lug around this to take pictures that look like the stereotypical, tourist. Yeah, I don't really want to do that. So then my main camera, this boy. I've talked a lot about this camera in the past, but let's talk sensors. So obviously this has a tiny little sensor buried in there, 12 megapixels, both of them. It's a dual sensor, so you have one up here, a wide angle, one down here is a telephoto, and they're both 12 megapixels. Sensor size is absolutely tiny. If I find it really quick, I'll throw up on the screen, probably not because I'm trying to get these videos out. The wide sensor is the same thing that's in this iPad. And then there's the GoPros. This GoPro Hero 7 has a 12 megapixel sensor. It's a lot bigger, has a wider f-stop, has a lot more magic working inside of it than the iPhones. So you can actually, if you really want, take astrophotography with the 7, which is photography of the stars if you didn't know. And so that's cool. Haven't done a lot. I need to find the little thingy for it. But yes, you can do like astrophotography with the 7. And then I have my main GoPro 10 that I record on. That's a 23 megapixel sensor, so it gets a big increase there. And then I have this guy, which is an 18 megapixel, but its sensor is a micro four thirds. It's a lot bigger. And then of course, if you compare it to a full frame, the sensor gets even bigger and even bigger. So of course, sensor size matters, but does resolution? Does megapixels? And that is dependent on what you are looking for. Actually, I could pull up footage of like a red Komodo dragon. That's like 8K, or I could pull up 1080p or 4K, probably 1080p, off of something like an Arri Alexa. Compare the two, and they're both going to give very different looks. While, say, the Arri, which has a much lower resolution sensor, around 20, I want to say it's going to be like 20 times lower. Not 100% sure. I'll do the math and throw it up on the screen. A much lower resolution. It's going to look better just because of the science that goes behind the building of the sensor and the crafting of each pixel. Whereas the Komodo Dragon 8K, that's really just cramming. Yes, it's a big sensor. It's a big sensor, but they both are. But it's just cramming pixels in, and say if one doesn't quite get the shot correctly, everything else will compensate, and in the end you have this massive frame as opposed to a 1080p from an Arri Alexa. And so what do these really give you? Well, they give you a couple different things actually. One being croppability. If you have a frame that's this big, you can punch it into this big. If you have something that's this big, you can't punch as much. I mean, you can, but you're not going to have the resolution, the sharpness. The sharpness is the correct term here. So if I have a screen resolution of 4K, or an image that has a 4K resolution, I can crop in to a 1080 and it'll still look good. It'll still be sharp. It'll still be clear. But if I have a 1080 and I crop into like the same magnification increase of the 4K to 1080, so 1080 or whatever, that'd be 480 maybe, it's going to be a lot lower resolution. Or if I take the 1080 and stretch it to 4K, then that's not going to. It's going to look stretchy. It's going to be blurry, and in reality, it's not blurry. It's still in focus, but the pixels have been stretched. They haven't been stretched. They've been expanded. They've been blown out. So the pixels, therefore, are being forced to be bigger, and then you can see the differentiation between the pixels as the image scales up. So you can see this a lot. Like if you take, say, I pull up an image on my iPhone here, and let's just say I take this lovely picture here from a walk I did a couple days. And if I zoom in, so if I zoom in like this, you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but well, let me go over here actually. Well, let's go to this car. You can't see its license plate. If I zoom in, like, it looks blurry, but in reality, it's in focus. Like, it's in very good focus. Or actually, a better example would be this light post here, okay? So this light post, let me bring my brightness down actually a little more. This light post is perfectly in focus, but as I zoom in, it starts to look blurry around the edges. It looks fringed, is the term, I believe. And why is that? Well, it's because you were forcing this image to zoom in so much that you're starting to actually see the pixel binning, which is, well, the pixels, not the pixel binning. So actually, let me bring up that same image on my iPad, and again, like if I zoom in like this, you can see the go over here, come on. You can start to see like the blurred edges and the lower amount of detail. And again, why is that? That's because the sensor is so small. So then, say I take a picture with a higher megapixel sensor. This is 12. Say I had taken the same picture with an 18 megapixel sensor. First of all, the sensor size is a lot bigger. So that's going to give me an image that's not necessarily sharper, but it's going to be able to pick up more light, and the focus is going to be stronger in a way. I don't know really the best way to explain this, but the bigger your sensor, the more light can come in, and therefore the faster your shutter speed can be, therefore allowing you to freeze it quicker in time and not have like any motion blur or any movement of the object, or you have that more compensated for. So a bigger sensor, more light, therefore faster shutter speed, therefore a sharper image. Whereas this, when the sensor is so tiny, it has to stay open for longer to get the light, actually allow light to come in, and then process the image. So that's why HDR is so highly pushed on smartphones, because that gives the phone the ability to take a couple images really fast, mesh them together, and create an image that's actually something quasi, decent. And not just quasi decent, it's a good image. I mean, you're never going to get the pictures you see on like the promotional stuff. Those are taken with this camera in the perfect lighting conditions with all this other equipment and accoutrements along with that. So resolution doesn't matter. It's in a lot of instances. I keep saying in a lot of instances and like depending. And that is true. If you're doing like a movie, not even that. If you have a 4K TV and you want to put content on it that looks the best, you need to put natively 4K content on it. If you have an 8K TV, you need to put natively 8K content on it to look the best. Now the other won't look bad, but it won't look the best it possibly can. And so I mean, obviously it gives you more croppability. I mean, there's a couple of YouTubers that are shooting their videos in 12K resolution. That's the approximation of 12,000 pixels. Let me bring up the actual resolution. I'll give you the number. It's mind-boggling, I'm sure. Okay, so 12K resolution. 12K resolution. Okay. Okay, 12K is 12,288 by 6480. 6480 is 5K. No, 6K. That's 72 million pixels. So if you have a TV that can push 72 million pixels 60 times a second, that's something a lot of TVs can't push. A lot of equipment can't record at. A lot of equipment can't buffer through. So editing 12K, that you have to have quite the power station. But when you have 80 million pixels to work with, again, that comes back to the crop, the scalability of the content, and it gives you the ability to crop in. So what does that really equate to for like the daily camera usage? Well, if you are a video creator and you know you're going to be a lot of zooming and like panning and like punching in for like effect, or like someone's like, say I'm talking about this and you just want to like punch in and do a quick screen grab of the GoPro, then you're going to want a higher megapixel count in your sensor, higher resolution. And with higher resolution, this is something I keep forgetting to say, with higher resolution comes higher megapixel. You can't shoot 8K unless you have a 40 megapixel sensor or higher. You can't shoot 12K unless you have I believe it's an 80 megapixel sensor. I'm not sure on like the actual like megapixel to resolution equation there, but you cannot shoot 8K video on a 12 megapixel sensor. You have to have a 40 something, I believe it's a 40 megapixel sensor is the minimum. And of course you can have a higher megapixel sensor and still shoot 8K, but you can also shoot stuff natively higher. And so with smartphones, with the chips inside of them, you need a chip that can actually go through it and not lag through the process of processing this information coming from the camera sensor constantly. So sensor size does matter because it allows more light and gets you a sharper image. Megapixels, not necessarily. Night, I would actually argue that if you're going to be taking a lot of night photos, lower megapixel is better because then each pixel is larger and can gather in more light. Because if you have like say 23 million pixels but they're all smaller, they won't be able to bring as much light, or you'll just have to have a longer shutter speed, so you'll have to have like 30 seconds as opposed to 10 or 15, shall we say, and as opposed to a 12. So megapixel size depends on the situation, resolution depends on what you're doing with the video, and actual sensor size does matter for pretty much everything. And so that's why the sensors in phones keep getting bigger. That's why we have phones with 1.5 inch sensors. That's why these sensors keep getting bigger. We have like practically inch plus sensors in these things now, which is crazy. But even with this video, if you look at it, you're probably seeing some noise around me. And if I was recording with this one, granted I wouldn't be recording at 5K right now, but there would be less noise because the pixels would be able to grab more light and bring it in, therefore not artificially brightening the video. So that's just a quick discussion on pixels, resolution, and sensor size. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe while you're down there because I'm trying to do this stuff a lot more frequently than I used to. Comment down below what you want to see in an upcoming video, and I will see you guys hopefully tomorrow. Take it easy. Peace.